welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. This week we've got UFC Vegas 30. We're staying in the Apex for a clash between top 5 heavyweights and Ciryl Gane and Alexander Volkov. The division's a little tricky with Stipe and John Jones sitting on the sidelines right now, but there is a big fight looming for the winner of this main event on Saturday. We've got a total of 13 fights. We're only going to be breaking down 12 of them for you guys with a late addition of Warley Albus as opponent. But if you're hanging out with us, do us a favor as always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We got back on the right side of things last week there, and I'll let you go over all of that. But before you do, man, hat looks good on you.
I appreciate it, man. It is weird wearing the hat, but I can accept picking Ige as the wrong fighter. It wasn't a fluke win by any means. TKZ definitely showed up. But it does feel great to go back positive, man. You know, we had a couple of rough weeks before that, so this was a big one for us. We started off with our play on Virna Jandiroba, which was honestly probably our easiest bet of the night and one that we should have hit a little harder. I know it was one that we kind of
drew back a little bit.
Yeah, drew back a little bit on, but afterwards, man, that was probably our best play of the night. Then you move on to Josh Parisian, which we added a little bit more to, and we probably shouldn't have, but like I texted you that night, we deserve that. We've been on the wrong side of a lot of shitty decisions, and I feel like we deserve that one.
Absolutely.
Then the Procopio fight, man. You know, after that performance, she's kind of made my all-time fade list. Yeah. Like, she ended up kind of just rolling onto her back a couple of times in that fight. It was that was really disappointing.
It was.
The Choi by TKO was our saving grace, man.
I knew it from the first exchange.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, he was the far superior striker in there, just much crisper, and that chin of Juliana Rosa just couldn't hold up. Then we went for the Vera inside the distance, which would have been the cherry on top of the night. But,
so close at the end.
Davy Grant, just a little too tough. And, I mean, if anything, he's a tough guy to finish. But Vera did deliver for us. Then that Bruno Silva versus Turman under 2.5. It's another one we kind of held back on, regrettably. But hindsight's 20/20. I'm glad that we played it for sure. Then lastly, the parlay, which was... man, looking really good. Matt Brown, you know, he really screwed us. I know Lima early on started landing those calf kicks, but kind
of -600 before the knockout live.
Paid the price by not getting the savvy veteran out of there.
Yep.
You know, Matt Brown ended up finding his timing, and that's that.
Yep.
We ended the night plus 1.69 units, so no complaints at all from us. We really do have a great night of fights, and like you said, I'm pretty sure Lewis, Francis, John Jones will all be tuning into this one. That'll be their next opponents in the years to come.
Absolutely, man.
Let's not waste any time. We'll jump right into the lightweight division where we see Yancy Medeiros, who's 15-7, taking on the Bosnian bomber Damir Hadžović, who's 13-6. You know, there's a reason why this is Medeiros' 15th fight in the UFC, and he's opening up a fight night card. You know, he kind of reminds me of a younger Nate Diaz, and a barely younger. He's 33 years old, Nate Diaz. Who just takes a lot of damage. He can stick inside the pocket and really land some good shots. But he's now been KO'd 4 times now, and 33 years old. It really doesn't look too bright as far as his future. He's only a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and training out there in Honolulu, Hawaii. I don't think he really gets those good looks like we want our fighters to get. And now Damir Hadžović, you know, he's training out of Arte Suave, where Penny Kinziad trains as well. He's kind of similar to somebody else we'll talk on the card later on in Charles Rosa, where if he doesn't have a path to victory in his ground game, he's kind of like a fish out of water on his feet. This is a tough fight to call. I think I'm going to go with Damir here, but it's not one that I'm looking to bet on, even though it is the first fight of the night. Yeah,
man, I'm going to side with Damir as well on this one here. Excellent matchmaking in the UFC's work here. An absolute must-win for both the guys, too, here with Yancy Medeiros. He's found himself on the L3, you know, but there's one thing about Yancy, man. The guys, he's going to fight for your money, you know. The striking, defense, the fight IQ might not be there, but Yancy's somebody that does fight for your money. He's been knocked down 7 times, but he's knocked down his opponents 9 times as well. He's in firefights, man. He's one of those that you're not going to miss when he's in the cage. But, you know, you can't really be losing to Donald Cerrone by TKO in the first round. And I know Lando looked good, but, man, Lando he danced around Yancy, and nothing Yancy was doing was working, and I really felt like that was kind of the point where we've seen Yancy's decline in his career. And now you only seen him fight, you know, once every year, basically, and so you can't really see improvements when he's not fighting consistently. I like to see him probably come out here and try to grapple early against Damir. You've seen Damir, you know, been taken down 9 times by Alan Patrick. 6 by Yagos. You saw how easy the takedown came from Moicano that led to the amateur get-up that got his back taken. Damir on the feet, man, I think he's got the power all day to hurt Yancy, but if he does find himself on the bottom, man, it's a tricky fight. Nothing my money is going to be put on with either one of these guys. One's coming off a big layoff, and like I said, one fights for your money, but he's completely untrustworthy with your money. I'm going to lean Damir Hadžović in the first fight on Saturday, but just ever so slightly.
I'm glad that we're not betting this fight because we are seeing it a little bit different. How I look at Damir, I do think that he'll be the much stronger fighter, and how I kind of compared Yancy to Nate Diaz. He's one of those like Gumby tall fighters. He just kind of can get worked because he's not the most muscular guy in there. So my lean is Damir, and that's only if he winds up on top. But like you said, if he winds up on bottom, Damir's not liking that position at all.
And this opened as a pick 'em the first time around. Now Damir's at a minus 150. I think you've lost a lot of value on it. Probably a smart play to pass.
Mm-hmm.
We move on to the second fight of the night where we see Charles Rosa, who's 13-5, taking on Justin Jaynes, who's 16-7. Man, there potentially is a pink slip awaiting the loser in the locker room of this fight on Saturday. Neither guy has found much success in their last outings. Charles Rosa there, known from being from Boston and stuff, but it looks like he's done some time at Sanford MMA for this camp on his Instagram. He kind of classifies himself as a dangerous black belt on the mat, man, but the last couple performances we've seen him dominated on the mat, in his last 2 losses. On the side of Justin Jaynes, training at Extreme Couture, one of the wrestling coaches there. One of the better debuts of 2020 here, but I was quite surprised to even possibly see him get another chance at the UFC. He's 1-3 currently, finished in all 3 of these in a row, and man, it's a tricky fight here. Jaynes is always live come round 1, and although since his return we've not seen Rosa shoot a single takedown in those 4 fights, I think his grappling could be the difference here. It's ultimately going to make me lean Charles Rosa here. But man, it's probably going to ultimately be a pass here, just siding with Charles Rosa. How about yourself?
Yeah, man. Charles Rosa is coming off like the worst loss of his career. And it's not due to damage. It's because you got 30-27 by Derek Minner. It's a tough one to come back from. And 34 years old, once again, like Yancy, the future doesn't look bright, Rosa's the type of fighter where, again, like if you have a wrestling advantage over him, you're gonna dominate him because he's not that great on the feet. He still hasn't figured it out on the feet. And when he is striking, he throws one shot at a time, and he's kind of got that style where he takes one to give one. And Justin Jaynes is not the kind of guy that you want to trade shots with, especially like you said in that first round. He's extremely dangerous. And it's like just like those 4 fights leading up to his UFC debut, he's looking for that first round finish. And honestly, I think that he's live here. And we were looking up the odds before this, and not all of them have come out. But what we do have is Jaynes inside the distance at plus 275 to plus 280. And I think that that's probably the way that I'll be playing this fight. Jaynes sitting at plus 145. You'd be hard pressed to try and convince me that Jaynes is going to outpoint Charles Rosa or get this nod on the judges' scorecard. So to get him inside the distance at plus 275, I think that that's probably the way to go. As we've seen in the past, Jaynes has been outclassed on the feet. In that last fight with Devontae Smith, he couldn't work inside that jab to save his life. But that's not something that I think he's going to have to worry with Rosa. Rosa's going to have to bring the fight to him, and as long as it's in that first 5 minutes, Jaynes is live to knock out anybody. I don't know if we've talked about the Gavin Tucker fight, but that's one where Gavin Tucker's a better fighter than Justin Jaynes, but Justin Jaynes put him on skates and also had him in a couple bad positions in that fight, which makes me think that Jaynes is live here. So I think officially I'll be betting on Jaynes. But Charles Rosa has the clearer path to victory.
Yeah, man, Jaynes has got more heart than just about anybody on the roster. You see him taking on fights that not smart of him to sign and take on. You talk about the Devontae Smith, Mowgli Benitez, both up at 155, not really his natural go-to weight where he likes to be prepared for. You're going to see him at 145 here where he's had a long camp at Extreme Couture. It's had a lot of success. So, I think we do see a good form of Justin Jaynes here as well. Big superstition person though, and Charles Rosa's alternated wins and losses since 2014. He's never lost 2 in a row, and although he is not, like you talked about, on the level of Gavin Tucker, Gabriel Benitez, or Devontae Smith, man, I still think Charles Rosa is going to find a way to get it done on Saturday, but I'm staying away.
I'm glad that you brought up him being at 145 this time. I remember in a James Lynch interview him talking about how he keeps on accepting these 145-pound fights on short notice, like with 4 weeks or less. And so those weight cuts are really, really hard on him. And he's not, even if he is making those weight cuts, he's not doing it the proper way. So to see him on this 8-week camp that he can fully get to that right weight, you're right. We might see a completely different Jaynes that maybe has a gas tank past the second round.
With you.
We move on to a women's fight in the bantamweight division where we have the Raging Panda, Julija Avila, who's 8-2, taking on Julija Stoliarenko, who's 9-4-1. Avila, she's got a judo and jiu-jitsu base, and she's got really good top pressure in wrestling. And that's definitely the path to victory that she's going to shoot for here. Get the fight to the ground as soon as possible, and probably look to just ride it out. Stoliarenko, she's 9-4-1, but that's a pretty misleading record. When you look down her actual record, she's got so many exhibition matches, custom rules, lethway, she's got well over 20 fights of experience. She also is known for her ground game, but a little bit more submission-based than wrestling-based. I think Avila is the A side in this one for sure. I just don't know about a 3-1 dog. And in a sport like women's MMA, knowing that Stoliarenko has the armbar from guard style finishes, it's really tough to throw Avila in a parlay or better straight or anything like that. So ultimately, just like we said whenever this fight first came around, we're not going to be betting on this one again.
I'm with you, man. Complete pass here. Julija Avila trains out of Outsiders Combat, something like that in Oklahoma City. Your guess is just as good as mine about who she's training with, who her coaches are. But the UFC's got high hopes for this girl, man. You know, she coming into the UFC, her only loss is by an injury during a fight there. She was a collegiate athlete. She'd beaten the tough winner Nico Montano early in her pro career, and then to start off her UFC career with the win over Paney Kyanzad, that's aging pretty well, man, you know. And then Gina Mazzani with a quick finish with that nasty knee up the middle. UFC had high hopes for this girl, man. That's when she comes in as a huge favorite to 6-6 Sijara Eubanks and just flat out drops the ball, you know. You look back at it, and 6-6 is a very crappy record. But all 12 of those girls that Sijara has fought are very top girls.
It's like Randa Marcos' record.
You're right. And so somewhat of a pass. She was able to take, Avila down and ride around on top, and Avila was not able to get off her back come round 2 or 3. And, with all these canceled bouts with Carol Hosa, Nico Montano, and very poor performance against Sijara Eubanks, you got to think Avila is coming in here to make a statement on Saturday. Like you said, weren't going to play it a couple weeks ago, still going to stay off of it again. Julija had that scary moment on the scale, man, where she steps back and passes out. It's easily, man, I have to think about a lot of them, but that's one of the more scarier moments that come to my mind, when it comes to the weight cutting issues and stuff. Prior to that, though, man, she's on like a 4 or 5 fight win streak coming into the UFC. She's looking good. She finishes like 10 or more fights by armbar, and you talked about all the dabbling in lethway, and the custom rules are 3 rounds, 3 minutes, so not really technically counting on her record. But yeah, much more experience than 9-4 shows. But she struggles with these girls who are a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger than her, that move well. And I think that's, Julija Avila in this case here. I think Julija Avila probably takes a book from the Yana Kunitskaya, puts her up against the cage, uses that athleticism, uses that strength, and man, like a lot of women's bantamweight fights, which I think hit the scorecards more than any other division in the UFC, this one probably goes to decision as well.
I couldn't agree more.
We take a step up to the men's light heavyweight division where we're seeing Marcin Prachnio, who's 14-5, taking on Ike Villanueva, who's 18-11. Both guys are on the chopping block that last time out, and both of them came up with a win in their last performance as well. Prachnio, guy from Poland, previously trained with the champ and John Blachowicz a couple years ago, but now does a lot of his camps out of the Netherlands and stuff. Where you see Ike doing a lot of his work in Houston, man. He works at a 4-ounce fight club with Daniel Pineda, who's later on the card, does a lot of work at Main Street Boxing and Muay Thai, where you see Derek Lewis training out of there. Man, 225, minus 200, minus 225 on Prachnio is quite criminal. He should never be a minus 200 against anybody on the UFC roster. But at the same time, man, I if he shows up the way he did against Khalil, I think this is a fight that he can win. more, I guess, playable play on this fight for me, I'm looking at maybe Ike inside the distance or Ike by TKO, just because we've seen the chin issues of Prachnio. But I think the smartest to play, man, is just to preserve the bankroll and probably stay away. Gun to the head. I'm going to go with Prachnio, man, but I think the value side is probably Ike. How about yourself?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I'm taking Prachnio, but this fight has trap written across it in big red letters, man. Prachnio, he is coming off one of the more surprising upsets of this year, and beating Khalil Roundtree. He was 0-3 before that, with all of them coming by first round loss, and his 4 fights, prior to the UFC, all of his wins were coming by first round knockout too. Which is just something that you don't like to see because you're not sure how they're going to look in those later rounds. But if he does stick to that measured approach that he took against Khalil Roundtree, you're right. This could be a relatively easy night for him. He's a karate black belt, and you really can't see it. You really can't see it. You know, he's one of those guys that'll literally duck his head and just kind of run in with some hooks that are wild. And he doesn't have the chin to back it up either, which is something you don't love to see. You look at Ike Villanueva's side, like, he has a full-time job outside of the UFC.
Blue-collar Mexican.
Yeah, dude. He's not gonna have the technical striking to make somebody like Marcin Prachnio pay, I don't think, barring that big overhand right that he has. And we've seen that huge power against Rashad Coulter in his fight before the UFC, but he's really only finally gotten to see it in the most chinniest fighter in the UFC, in Vinicius Moreira.
You can't kick punch.
Yeah, right. And it's funny that you brought up him training with Derek Lewis, because he is one of those guys very similarly that doesn't have much other than power but can still get it done. And that's why he has an 18-11 record. This, like we talked about, is not a fight that I'd be betting on. I don't recommend betting on it at all, even if you have a lean towards one side. I don't think that there's too much value on these low-level heavyweights, or light heavyweights, I apologize. Yeah, this is Marcin Prachnio's fight to lose, and definitely could be the pink slips for either guy if they lose.
Yeah, man, Marcin definitely needs to look to keep that range. He does have a little bit of a karate, like you said, background, so it's a little bit there in his base of his striking. He's real wide. He'll throw the long, kick from the backside and stuff. But you're right, man. It's just a lot of head down, swinging overhand rights, and walking straight into hooks from people like Sam Alvey and stuff. And man, he's been finished, plenty of times himself. He doesn't have the greatest chin in the world, but he's tough as nails, man, and he'll get in your face. And if he does land one of those big hooks, and Prachnio does not have the chin, or the history showing me that he has a chin to be able to keep up with someone like Ike if he lands that power. Now that was just supposed to be an absolute layup for Khalil, and he just absolutely dropped the ball here. But surprisingly, man, for the first time, and I think in his UFC career, I'm going to pick Marcin Prachnio on Saturday to win a fight.
Moving on, we go to the welterweight division, where we see Michel Prazeres, who's 26-3, taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov, who's 13-0. Michel Prazeres, a little over 2 years away and 1 month removed from a 40th birthday, making his return against the surging Shavkat Rakhmonov. Prazeres, he's a third-degree black belt, and at only 5'6", 170 pounds, one of the widest bodies in the UFC. His game plan's really simple. He wants to get the fight to the mat, get a sub on you, and if not get the sub, lay there and ride it out. When it is on the feet, he throws with a ton of power. It kind of resembles, especially his lead left hook, Jessica Andrade. That's what I get from that style of fight. Where you look at Shavkat, undefeated fighter from Kazakhstan. He's got a loss on his record after his pro debut that counts as an amateur fight. So, I don't know. Take that with a grain of salt, but I don't know how that happens. He's got a 100% finish rate, so we don't know much about him. And I know that he looked great against Alex Oliveira, but how much does that tell you with Alex Oliveira in 2021 or 2020? He's training out of the Olympic Training Center in Kazakhstan, so I know that he's going to have a good gas tank, but we just haven't seen that yet. So I'm really just guessing there. I'll take Prazeres by decision as my play on this fight, just because I don't think that Rakhmonov has proven enough at 13-0 to make me want to lay the minus 270 price tag.
I feel you, man. Has no determination upon how this fight is ever going to play out in the octagon, but to me it is quite obvious what the UFC would rather happen here on Saturday. You've got Prazeres, who, like you said, is a month out from turning 40, taking on the new sensation of the welterweight division, who's got all the physical advantages that one could want in a fight. With Michel Prazeres there, man, I feel like a fucking tank, man. His name's a tractor for a reason. He's built just like that. He's 5'6", probably 190 pounds outside of camp. But he's been on the sidelines for a while, and as you get closer to the age of 40, man, and I got to think that your performances are going to start decreasing the more time that you put in between your performances there. In his last loss, man, it comes to Ismail Nordiev. I can draw a lot of comparisons to that fight, man. Ismail Nordiev is a 5'10" striker who has, 15 years younger, who has a huge reach advantage, and in my opinion is not as good of a fighter as Shavkat Rakhmonov is when it comes to the ground game. But you're right, Prazeres, man, looks to drag you down to the mat. He's super dangerous round one, slings that left hook in. But I think he's just going to have his hands full with one of the better prospects that the UFC's got right now. Training out of Kazakhstan, but just a couple days ago he posted something where he was at Sanford MMA training with Henry Hooft, working on the striking. So he's getting great work from everywhere. The M1 global scene where you come from, you've seen guys like Mavzar and stuff come from there. They develop you over there, man. You fight good competition, and to see him finishing every single one of those guys, it makes me hopeful for this guy into the UFC. And out Cowboy Oliveira, you're right. His today, his cardio is pretty shit, and he doesn't have a lot to him come especially round two. But Shavkat just, man, put on a little bit of a clinic, man. On the outside, his boxing looked crisp. He had the nice outside leg kick. And when he got in, man, he showed that he had some nice trips and stuff. The Sambo background shows you that, he's dangerous just as much on the mat. I have parlayed Shavkat with someone actually on a later fight card that we'll talk about in a couple weeks. But I think the best play here is the fight doesn't go the distance, in my opinion. Prazeres is 10-3, and he's a BJJ black belt with a ton of submission threat. But I think if he were to have to work back to his feet, or Shavkat, works back up to his feet enough, I think we could see the 40-year-old tire out a little bit and not have that gas tank come round three. And with the 100% Shavkat finish rate, it screams under here. The reason that I think I'm okay parlaying and laying the money on Shavkat, someone with a 6-inch height advantage and 10 inches in reach, sitting at a minus 240 implies around 70%. And with those kind of advantages, man, I'm kind of all right with saying that he might win 70% of the time. I know Stefan Struve kind of throws a little wrench in there, losing a bunch of fights. Don't tell Mays. But, yeah, man, I think Shavkat's the side here, and, man, I think he has a bunch of potential in the UFC in the future, man.
So another reason why I'm laying off of this fight is Rakhmonov's willingness to go to the ground. Mm-hmm. I see that happening in the Alex Oliveira fight, and I think that somebody like Prazeres, who's ultimately going to shoot for that over and over again, him being as well versed as he is on the ground and having that top control pressure, I think that's where I see that's why I'm staying off, is Rakhmonov. If he pulls for that gilly like he did against Alex Oliveira, I don't know if he's going to get it on somebody who doesn't have a neck against 5'6" Michael Prazeres. And being only 13-0 and not really seeing how he's going to perform out of that second round, that's why I'm on the Prazeres by decision at plus 450. It's just one of those ones where I'm throwing $5 on it and hoping to win 40, whatever the hell.
And half the fights of Prazeres and stuff, laying the minus 240 it's probably not the smartest thing to do on the one fight, one UFC fight, Shavkat.
Right.
Our prelim main event of the night takes place in the bantamweight division, where we see Raoni Barcelos, who is 16-1, taking on Timur Valiev, who's 17-2. Very, very underrated fight on this card, man. Absolutely should probably be on the main card, but free to the public there, prelim main event spot. It is actually sitting in a pretty good spot to get a lot of the public's attention here. Barcelos, he's kind of been seen as a division sleeper, dark horse for a little while. He's 5-0 in the UFC, and he's finished 3 of these wins and inside the distance. Dude's extremely well-rounded. On the side of Valiev, much anticipated debut for this guy, and high hopes as well. He's one of these Russians who can strike, who can grapple. Fantastic record, fantastic level of competition that he's fought. Coached by Mark Henry, he trains with a lot of guys up there like Frankie Edgar, up in the Northeast, man. And very, very good fight, man. Both of these guys, the winner probably might get a number next to their name, come next week, and has a big fight in one of the most stacked divisions looming ahead of him with the win, man. I think the line is wide. The value side is Timur. but I think I'm going to go with Barcelos here, man. How about yourself?
It's tough to find a way for Barcelos to lose a fight in this division, and I think that's why I'm looking to not pick a side for this fight, because you're right, the value is on Valiev here. Valiev's one of these guys who, in his last 7 fights, he hasn't been less than a minus 400, and now we're getting him at almost 2-1 underdog against anybody. Sounds kind of ridiculous, you know? But you're right, Barcelos, 34 years old. He's kind of one of those late bloomers in the UFC where, you know, he is an absolute killer, but is his future in the UFC as bright as some of these other prospects? And that might be why you're seeing somebody like Barcelos get matched up with somebody, again, outside of the top 15. Might just be a name builder for either guy here, but I don't think the UFC is going to be crying if Barcelos gets a loss here. He's 5-0 in the UFC and still not ranked, and I think that that's just bantamweight for you, you know? In that Taha fight that he had, it more or less was Taha just kind of hanging on. He, like you said, he got his fair share of decent shots, but Barcelos was the one leading that dance for sure. It's funny because Barcelos, he puts together some of the most impressive combinations while he's on the feet, but I don't even think that that's the most dangerous part of his game. It's when he gets the fight to the ground where he's a legitimate black belt, and I think he might be, you know, I forget the degree of black belt, but he is a legitimate fighter on the ground. And to be that well-rounded, it's going to be a tough task for somebody in Valiev who, you know, he's really fast and has a lot of explosive power, but he relies on his wrestling a lot. And I don't know if he's going to be able to get away with that with somebody like Barcelos. I know that Valiev has trained with people like Aljamain Sterling in the past, and Aljamain's been quoted saying that he is ridiculous with his quick twitch muscles, and his wrestling pressure is very strong. Which makes this a sleeper fight for me, but the way that I want to play this fight is fight doesn't go the distance at plus 150. I don't think that there's too much finishing upside on the Valiev side, but I do think that it could happen against somebody like Barcelos, who does leave himself open and take some shots himself. And then as far as the Barcelos side, I don't think I can lay minus 220 on him, but I definitely can take plus money on Barcelos piecing up Valiev and banking that Valiev doesn't have the same type of chin that Taha or Said Nurmagomedov had.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you, and the plus 150 is a little bit tempting. Both of them have a lot of finishing upside to their game. Barcelos, you talked about his combinations, man, whether he leads with the kick, the uppercut, the right hand, man, it's all so smooth, and he slings a left hook from hell behind it that he's looking to take your head off. On the mat, man, he just slices right through people, you know, straight to mount, wraps up the legs the way Khabib does, and nasty calf kick. I love what I see from Barcelos, you know. And on the side of Valiev, the debut was going just according to plan, you know, until Chris Taglioni pulls one of his specials and lets guys, you know, almost get killed and come back, and Trevin Jones gets a TKO in round 2, and it's kind of, I think that could be about why we see the plus 200. You know, if he goes out there and dismantles Trevin Jones and gets that win and then does the same thing to Martin Day, it could be a lot closer, you know. But the fact that we've seen Timur Valiev TKO in the feet by someone of far less caliber is probably why we see these odds here. I think Timur should probably look to wrestle a little bit, man. I know he might not want to mess around with Barcelos on the mat, but if he can make Barcelos work back to his feet a couple times, and Brazilians are known to gas a little bit, you know, and as he's getting up there in age, not fighting all that consistently, we haven't really seen the gas tank of Barcelos being needed. And when it is going to decision, it's with Taha, where, you know, Barcelos is mainly offense, no defense there. So I think if teamwork can make him work a little bit, things do get a little bit interesting. I'm going to pass on picking a side here as far as making a play, but I'm going to go with Barcelos, man, and I hope he gets a really exciting fight because he's a guy I could watch fight all day long.
We kick off the main card in the lightweight division where we see Renato Moicano, who's 14-4-1, taking on the Black Country banger Herbert, who's 10-2. Renato Moicano is coming off of one of our favorite KO losses to date against Rafael Fiziev, but he did take the proper time off, which is something that I do want to note. He at least took the 6 months off to kind of regain his wits about him. I know that he had already paid for it coming back too quickly against the Korean Zombie and immediately coming back from the Jose Aldo loss, and then the Korean Zombie immediately piecing him up. In his last fight against Fiziev, it's a weird one, man. We know Moicano has a really good ground game, but here recently it's like, he gets a fighter in Fiziev who's a striking coach at Tiger Muay Thai, and he decides to try and stand and bang with him. It's not working out. And in that scenario is why I don't like Moicano at minus 245 here. I don't think that his fight IQ is where I want it to be for me to back him by any means. And then on Jai Herbert, he's getting that work in at Renegade BJJ, where he's the one of the main training partners of Leon Edwards. Mm-hmm. And you can see that in his game, dude. Yeah, his straight right is the exact same as Leon Edwards' straight left. I mean, it's right down the middle, like a piston coming out of. I mean, it's impressive to say the least. I do know that Jai is a little inexperienced on the ground. He's only a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he does have some physical reach advantages in this matchup that make me think that he is a live dog here.
Yeah, man, this fight is a really, really good fight. I'm super excited for it. It's crazy for me to think that just a couple years ago, Renato Moicano was legitimately like 2 minutes away from a number one contender fight in the featherweight division before, succumbing to the guillotine there of Brian Ortega. I would put him real close to a title shot, man. He's arguably up 2 rounds there, and now he's at a different weight class of 155, fighting guys like Damir Hadžović and Jai Herbert, who has 1 UFC fight under his record. Not to mention he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights, all by TKO as well. Renato Moicano has found himself in a little bit of a tricky spot, much different than it was a couple years ago, but stayed trying true to his game at American Top Team with great training partners there, a lot of high-level lightweights to get the work in. Ton of forward pressure, and yeah, he did decide to strike with Fiziev, but there was a couple things, man, that I took away. He wasn't lost on the feet. He landed a couple good right hands to the body, was able to sneak it up high and kind of wobble Fiziev, where we saw him shoot the one half-ass takedown he did in that fight. He also, he's very technical. Everything's down the middle with him too. And if you aren't elite, man, Moicano seems to make pretty quick, easy work of you. And Jai Herbert. I have it written down here as well, man. It's literally the conventional version of Leon Edwards. You're right. You couldn't even told me they trained together, and watching this guy, he fights just like him. He peppers the jab with this, in his case, the left jab out there, just looking for the right hand around the guard. He's your Cage Warriors lightweight champion there. And he looked good against Francisco Trinaldo until round 3. And I don't know if it was a little bit more of adrenaline dump, cardio, but we saw Trinaldo, although he did miss weight in that fight, kind of take over round 3 and then ultimately land that big shot that put him away. And Herb Dean, I don't know what he was doing, not stepping in and stopping that fight. Herbert took way more damage than he should have there, and Call stole, what is it?
Dan Hardy.
Yeah, Dan Hardy.
I was just about to say that.
But one big thing here for me, you brought up a jiu-jitsu purple belt. The guy just turned pro back in 2015, late to early 2016 or something like that. He's found a ton of success early fighting those guys in Cage Warriors and stuff. We'll tell you, the guys over at Cage Warriors in Europe tend not to have the best ground game and stuff to them, And I think that could be his downfall, man. I think if he runs into these guys who are able to find that takedown on him, I think he can make quick work of them. I am not going to lay the big price tag on Moicano. I was trying to look at the submission prop. It's plus 190 or plus 175 on BetOnline. Plus 195 on FanDuel, and man, that's just not enough for me to want to take a stab on it at all. It actually makes me want to play the dog in Jai Herbert even more. But ultimately, I'm going to pass. I'm probably going to side with Moicano. I think he gets the submission win.
And I just wanted to throw it out there. Moicano's good on the feet. I understand that he outboxed Calvin Kattar in 2018. That's a legitimate win, and probably why he started falling in love with the striking more and more. And the only reason why he resorted immediately to a submission game whenever he fought Damir Hadžović on that 2L streak.
Yep.
This is just, like I said, again, a guy where he is dangerous enough on the feet that if Moicano doesn't come in with the exact same game plan, or if at least he's not telling me leading up to this fight in interviews that he will be taking it to the ground, I cannot trust him with my money here.
I'm right there with you, brother. Continuing on with the main card, we're in the welterweight division where we see Nicolas Dalby, who's 19, 3-1, taking on Tim Means, who's 31, 12-1. Man, it was really hard to find a fight on this card that you and I were disagreeing on and stuff, but I think we're going to go with this one for the casual cap next week. It's one of the tougher fights on this fight card to cap for me, to be honest with you. With Nicolas Dalby, was already supposed to be scheduled to fight on this card here. He had an opponent, fall out and pull out. So it kind of worked out in Tim Means' best favor just to step back a week here and take a fight. Nicolas Dalby, training out of Copenhagen, Denmark, looks in phenomenal shape on his Instagram here, natural karate style. Taking on the natural boxer here in Tim Means, who was scheduled to fight Danny Roberts last week before the COVID incident, and now being pushed back a week. He's a born and raised Albuquerque, New Mexico, man. He's got great cardio. He can put on a great pace for 15 minutes and mainly relies on that technical boxing of his. This is, like I said, one of the tougher fights for me to call. I think the line, getting closer is the appropriate thing. I think this fight is real close to a pick'em, and I'm going to side with the dog and Nicolas Dalby here, man, to get it done, probably by decision. I think you're on the other side, though.
Yeah, I'll accept the challenge for sure. It's like you said, it's not one of either of our biggest leans on the challenges by any means. I felt more confident in Ige than I do about Tim Means this week. But yeah, Dalby, he's one of those very rare fighters where we see he gets a second chance in the UFC, and then on top of that, he's 34, 35 years old when he gets in. But he's definitely taking advantage of it, man. I know a lot of people did not think that he won that last fight against Daniel Rodriguez, and if you just looked at the stats, he didn't win that fight against Daniel Rodriguez, but he is somebody that I actually cashed on that fight as like a plus 265 underdog. And did what he had to do. He, like you said, karate-style stance, in and out, very wide stance, and did enough, I guess, to point fight his way to victory, which is the karate method right there. Back in the day, I would have said that Dalby offered a takedown threat, but I don't think that that's the case anymore. You look down at his past 5 fights, and he shot for 1 takedown in all of those, which is why I think if this stays on the feet, Tim Means with his boxing is why I think he'll get this done. Tim Means, he does, on the inside, he has great dirty boxing, but he does kind of leave himself open for counters by not keeping his hands up, blocking on whatever side he's throwing, he's not blocking that opposite side, and that could cost him, and that would be something that I'd be really worried about if I thought that Dalby had the knockout power that could make him pay for it. This marks the 20th UFC fight for Tim Means, and this seems like one of the more winnable ones out of his last few. I do think that Tim Means, he's called the Dirty Bird for a reason. His fights are dirty, man, and it's not going to be I don't think it's going to be a clear win for either guy, and it'll probably flip flop during the fight. More than it'll be one-sided. So I am okay with making this a challenge and it just kind of being one of those ones where we got to pick somebody,
Yeah, it is one of those challenges where we're just picking someone so that we have one, because on the side of this Nicolas Dalby, when you're out there getting put away by Jesse Ronson, and then 0 for 7 on your takedowns, and, like you said, stat-wise, 0 for 7 on your takedowns and outlanded by every single round in strikes by D-Rod. Nicolas Dalby, I guess, right now, Tim Means is definitely, hit the strides late in his career that Dalby's just not. Tim Means coming off wins over Star Poli and Mike Perry, where his boxing and cardio were just, were the game changers, especially come late in that fight, able to put you up against the fence and rely on that veteran savviness there, man. What I like about Tim Means boxing so much is he doesn't throw it out there to injure Knight every time. He doesn't telegraph anything. It's just peppering you with shots, relying on that volume and that cardio that he's had his whole life there at elevation. Tricky one, man, but I think Nicolas Dalby, like you said, he hasn't done it a lot, but I think he does have that wrestling threat that he could take Tim Means down. I think in those clinch positions, we're just going to see Dalby being the more stout, shorter opponent, going to have the good head position and might be able to make this, a dirty clinch fight. I'm going to go with Nicolas Dalby and the underdog at a plus 120 for our challenge next week.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if Dalby can, or if Means, I guess, can get into the boxing range of Dalby, because Dalby will be either in or out. There's not an in-between for him. So, yeah, Tim Means trying to catch him coming in on it with a counter is kind of where I see him having success.
Yeah, so we're putting the casual cap on the line for this fight, and I think we're going to agree, go ahead, man, that this is one of the tougher fights, though, on the main card.
For sure. We move on to a great fight in the featherweight division where we see Andre Touchy Fili, who's 21-8, taking on Daniel Pineda, who's 27-14. Touchy Fili's coming off a loss to our boy Thug Nasty. Right. He's a 16-fight UFC veteran, and you know where he stands among active featherweights. He's a gatekeeper, man. He does have a very spotty record, but he's one of those guys who does not lose twice in a row. And judging by that last performance, this should be a clear win for him.
Yeah.
Fili does a really good job at mixing in his takedowns with his striking, and that's something that he always has over his opponent, is the element of surprise, because he doesn't have to rely on either of those parts of his game to get the W. Where Pineda, he is somewhat one-dimensional, man. He's coming off of the loss to the legend himself, Cub Swanson, and proved once again that he is a fast starter, and outside of that early finish, whether it be on the ground or by KO, he's fucked, dude. And I do think that he's probably in over his head at this point again, which is why I'm picking Andre Fili, but it is tough to bank on Andre Fili, who's kind of shown us some inconsistencies over his career at minus 230.
I'm with you, man. I'm on the Andre Touchy-Feely side as well. He's a guy that trains out of Team Alpha Male forever now, and you look on his social media, he's been doing some work with John Danaher and Gary Tonin and stuff a lot, prepping himself for this fight. Absolute veteran, and you talk about, he's never going to lose 2 in a row, and he's losing to good competition, man, to Yair Rodriguez, to Bryce Mitchell, to Sadiq Youssef. These are good guys, and Sadiq Youssef and Bryce Mitchell are 2 of the brighter prospects the featherweight division has. But you can also argue that he might have lost that fight to Charles Jourdain, and could have put Andre Fili on an L3 right now. But you touched on it, man. The guy is extremely well-rounded, and he can strike, he can wrestle, he's got a great jab, great kicks from the outside, and he's landed a takedown in 12 of his 16 UFC fights. That's in the 4 fights that he has not landed a takedown, you've seen Andre Fili lose 3 of those. So the wrestling is a huge portion of his game that he relies on to usually take a lot of decision victories. I think it's 9 of his last 10 or something that have gone to decision. He's also got some real skinny legs, man. And you saw Daniel Pineda almost get Cub Swanson out of there in round 1 with those calf kicks. And I think that's something Daniel Pineda could have a huge success with in this fight. I mentioned it earlier there. He trains at a 4-ounce fight club in Houston with Ike Villanueva. And on his Instagram, he's not been very active, but he did post something that he's working on the nutrition side of things. And you could tell in the Cub fight, although he looked like a freaking 155er in there that night against Cub, not even the end of round 1, he's already breathing out of his mouth and stuff. This guy doesn't have the best of gas tanks. So he said he's focusing on the nutrition side of things, and hopefully he has, a second round of gas in him. But at 35, man, he's already, went 2-4 in the UFC, was over in PFL, popped for performance-enhancing drugs. I got to think that, the best fighting days for Daniel Pineda are probably behind him, especially if he can't get you out of there in round 1. I am looking at the under 2.5 at plus money in this fight. I know Andre Fili is typically a decision machine, but he's got somebody in front of him in Daniel Pineda who is absolutely not. And if you're going to take a shot on the underdog in Pineda, the dude's never won a decision. He has not seen the scorecard since 2016. So, take him inside the distance if you're going to take a shot on the underdog in Daniel Pineda. But I think, with the gas tank issues, Andre Fili absolutely has a potential to see a finish here. But just solely seeing the finishing side that Pineda has had recently to see this under 2.5 at plus money, I think it's worth a shot, man. But picking a side, I'm going to go with Andre Fili. I think he gets it done inside the distance, probably second or third round.
Yeah, I don't mind that pick at all.
We move on to the light heavyweight division where we see Danilo Marques, who's 11-2, taking on Kennedy Nzechukwu, who's 8-1. Danilo Marques been doing a lot of work at King's MMA. Looks like he's maybe moved him and his whole family up to the United States after the recent success he's had. He was brought in off a 2.5-year layoff there on Fight Island after cornering his, good old pal Shogun there in a fight, and has now found himself 2-0, surprisingly, in the UFC. On the side of Kennedy, man, trains out of Fortis MMA. He's got one of the best frames that you could ask for in the division. And, he's kind of the exception to the Nigerian wave. I don't think Kennedy is ever going to touch a belt or a top 5 spot like his fellow countrymen who hold 3 of the belts. I think this guy lacks a lot of the killer instinct needed. But I will say, I think that was brought out a little bit in that Carlos Ulberg fight. And, with the frame and stuff like this guy has, man, the sky could be the limit if you could just get this guy to flip that switch on him and get those skills buffed up some. I'm going to go with Kennedy. I wish I would have got dog money. I think I got it around a minus 105, so I'm still happy with it. Going to go with Kennedy. Probably take a decision win here, man.
Yeah, this is a tough fight to call, man. This was actually our other option for our challenge this week. I think I like Danilo Marquez, which is saying it out loud. It's kind of funny, I like him at plus money right here. Like you said, he's on a 4-fight win streak, 2 of those in the UFC, and maybe the least impressive wins that you could think of. Right. His first win against Kadis Ibragimov.
We played Kadis.
Yeah.
That's even more embarrassing to say.
He gets a dub over Kadis, and then slow Mike Rodriguez. He shows that he can get it to the ground and get the dub. Marquez, he's been on the receiving end of a lot of flack. You look at his record before the UFC, and he didn't fight but one opponent that had a positive record coming into it. He's a little bit unproven. In the fights that we have seen, he wastes 0 time trying to get the fight to the mat. Mm-hmm. He will instantly shoot for that single leg takedown that he relies on quite a bit. But that being said, he does have decent chain wrestling. Mm-hmm. He will consistently go after that, and he'll work it until he is dog tired. Yeah. On the Kennedy side, yeah, he cashed in big on that Olberg win, which I love because my girlfriend's so big about Carlos Olberg. I love that he got a loss right coming into the UFC.
Loss.
Yes. For the weight class, like you said, outside of John Jones, probably has the best frame in there.
I knew you'd throw that in there.
I know. Outside of that 2-1 record, it's super weird, man. You think about the Paul Craig fight where he's winning the majority of the fight, and then Paul Craig does what Paul Craig does and gets the last second triangle. Then that Darko Stosic fight, that should be a loss on Kennedy's record. Thankfully, he got kicked in the nuts twice and got him that dub on the judges' scorecard. And then Carlos Olberg, he had to Homer Simpson his way to that victory, man. He took a lot of punishment from Olberg before Olberg started to suck some wind. This is not a fight that I would put a bunch of money on. I personally am gonna play Danilo Marquez, but I don't blame you if you lay off and just want to sit back and try and enjoy this one.
Yeah, man. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Danilo Marquez, he makes a living off that single leg, man. That's like the only takedown entry you see this guy shoot, and it's almost Damian Maia like, man. It works for him, and he's perfected it. He's dangerous on the mat, and he ran straight through Mike Rodriguez on the mat when he got him there. With the side of Kennedy, he trains out of a great gym who has a lot of grapplers there from him, and we've seen him face 26 takedowns in his UFC career so far, and I think he's defended like 21 of these takedowns. So he's been tested in the wrestling before, because when a guy has a frame like that, no one wants to strike with him. They're all going to come out there and try to take him down. So I think that's just been a thing of Kennedy's whole career, is defending takedowns after takedowns. I will not go 0 for 3 fading Danilo Marquez. It just is not going to happen. I'm going to pick Kennedy and Nzechukwu, and I've already made a slight play on him here, man. Probably a boring fight. Neither one of these guys have a lot of finishing upside to them, unless Kennedy's got a brawler like Olberg in front of him throwing, heavy hands and gas, and he's usually a decision machine himself. Kennedy by decision, man.
I don't know if this is good, if this is why I'm putting so much stock into Marquez, but I do like the fact that he fought somebody in Mike Rodriguez, who's an exceptionally tall, lanky fighter, and was just able to dominate him. And like you said, Kennedy has shown good takedown defense in the past. I just don't know how he's going to fare against somebody who matches him in height that will also be looking to take him to the ground. Yeah. It's something that Kennedy has relied on a lot by using those long limbs to keep it from going to the mat. So maybe Marquez can get that single leg up over his hips and make him get to the mat.
And you bring up a good point. Stosic's like 5'10".
Right.
Marquez over here at 6'6". He's a very big guy as well. So good point that you bring up right there.
We move on to the co-main event of the evening, where we see OSP, Ovince St. Preux, who's 25-15, taking on the bulldozer Tanner Boser, who's 19-8-1. This actually marks the 24th UFC fight for OSP since his debut in 2013. Easily one of the most consistent fighters that the UFC has ever given us, fighting over 3 times a year since his debut. This is his second time at heavyweight, but it is a completely different fight. And that first time whenever he fought Ben Rothwell, that was a huge, 6'5", cut into 265 heavyweight. He's now facing Tanner Boser, who, is a heavyweight, but is coming in like Stipe, like Alexei Oleinik. Yeah, you're floating around that 230 range, and it's not a great look, and somebody who I think OSP could really size-wise match up well against. I do feel like OSP has really seen a significant decline in his production and success in the UFC, but I am happy that he took off a good 6 months in between that KO loss from Jamal Hill. He comes out of Knoxville, Tennessee, so in that sense, we love supporting our boys from Tennessee. Where Tanner Boser, man, his last 2 fights were rough to want to back him at all. Yeah. I know that this one, he's almost to the point where he's fighting for pink slips, and I know that he wants to get this win, but it will be a tall task against somebody like OSP who has the veteran savviness to get it done, whether it be on the ground or on the feet.
Yeah, man, they can't seem to get rid of the veteran in OSP. Every time his back's up against the wall, he reps out a win when he needs it the most, and he's scheduled at light heavyweight here to face Maxim Grishin, so, he's probably happy that it's up at heavyweight, not having to do the weight cut, but getting ready for a light heavyweight fight, you got to think that he was prepared to cut that weight and in pretty good shape coming into this fight. But the one time we have seen him at heavyweight, it was a pretty bad performance on his behalf. The extra weight did not translate into good cardio for him, and he was mouth breathing easily come round 2. Man, you drop down back to 205 though, and you look sensational against Minifield. I know I picked Minifield in that fight, and Minifield landed 1 or 2 that kind of sent OSP a little skating across the octagon. But outside of that, man, looked sensational. The volume was on point. Anytime Minifield stepped into range, he killed him with that that front kick to keep him back and cut the octagon off and made him run straight into that left hook of his. It was a Jamal Hill fight that showed me, man, that he really struggles with guys that will put a lot of volume on you, and that's something that I think Tanner Boser could do. But back to OSP side, although he is going up to heavyweight, man, he's 6'3", he's got the 80-inch reach, he's going to be the bigger guy here compared to Tanner Boser, and he's got a ton of, like I said, the front kick that he relies on to keep it at range, and he'll turn that front kick into a high kick, just ask Corey Anderson how that is. But I think at heavyweight, man, I don't think he wants to strike with Boser. I think he should probably try to grapple, and I don't know if he's going to have that cardio to be able to do that for the amount of time necessary to beat Tanner Boser over the scorecards. Boser is looking to get back on track. He's looking for a vengeance, man. He was immediately on social media after that close decision loss to Latifi, asking for another fight, telling you he's going to make up for it. But then, here recently, he's just kind of looked like a deer in the headlights. When it comes to the feet, he's not throwing the way he, used to, like he was in the Lens and the Pessoa fight, and he's found himself on the losing streak now, and potentially, like you said, on the chopping block. I expect Tanner Boser to come out here and put that footwork, that movement, that speed that he relies on, and I think he is going to take OSP, obviously probably to a decision. OSP does not have chin issues like a lot of people say he does, but I will say he's not the best at wearing a shot. I guess you could say he kind of does shell up a little bit, but you're never seen him going out cold, by no means. I think Boser's volume probably just going to be a little too much. He's content with kicking the legs from the outside there. I know you don't want to probably play the range game with OSP, but a natural heavyweight and Tanner Boser I think might have a little bit of success doing it. I don't know if I want to lay the minus 150, minus 170, or whatever it is on Tanner Boser. That is getting a little tricky. What's it sitting at? Tanner Boser, minus 150 to the minus 170s. It's a little too much for me, in my opinion, especially the form we've seen him in. But I will say Tanner Boser probably takes this one.
Yeah, man, it's weird that Tanner Boser's hype train literally came to a screeching halt in these last 2 fights, but I think the biggest thing that plays a factor in this is experience level, and Tanner Boser, them having a decade in age difference, Tanner Boser has been a professional for as long as OSP has been in the UFC. That's 24 UFC fights that OSP's had to look at by the time Tanner Boser had his first opponent. I do think that's not playing in his factor, or in his to his advantage at all. But you did talk about the distance strikes in Boser, and I'll admit there is a stat that I have here that's a legitimate one that Boser actually put on his Instagram this week. He's neck and neck with Ciryl Gane at distance strike accuracy, both of them being over 50%. And as far as, shot for shot with OSP, that might actually be his path to victory here. If he does win on volume and kind of overwhelm OSP, I would agree with you that OSP has seemed like he doesn't wear shots well. He doesn't have the volume, and he gets hit, man. At the end of the day, OSP does get hit, and although his chin holds up, he doesn't react the best to him. So it's weird. When I opened this up, I was leaning towards OSP on experience, but then I take that distance strikes into account and how much volume Boser does have, and I could definitely see it. I'm glad that we are deciding to lay off this fight, but it's do or die for Boser, and OSP is just collecting a check at this point.
I'm with you. And in our main event of the evening, we see the number 3 ranked Ciryl Gane, who's 8-0, taking on the number 5 ranked Alexander Volkov, who's 33-8. And the winner of this fight potentially is extremely close to a title shot, if not having a massive fight looming ahead of them. Ciryl Gane, I guess ex-training partner of Francis Ngannou, like a lot of people say, before Francis has made the move to the United States. Gane stayed there in France, working at the MMA factory there, where he's training with Alan Baudot, and some straight killers and stuff. But now he has brought in like a 7-foot, Olympic boxer here to help prepare for Volkov, which is something that you like to see, because you can't just go into a Volkov fight thinking he's like any other heavyweight. On the side of Volkov, trains out of Russia there, but been putting the finishing touches on at Black House MMA there in California. And man, I have considered him a dark horse for a long time, far before he put on this weight. I remember cashing on him against Fabricio Verdum, and I've most recently cashed on him against Walt Harris and Alistair Overeem. I think he's a real dark horse of the division, and I love that you just brought up that stat in that last fight against Boser and Gane in the distance strikes, because guess who's number 1 on that list? Our boy Alexander Volkov, man. I think we see the fight the same way, man. There's a ton of value on the much more experienced, much bigger, much more talented striker, in my opinion, in Alexander Volkov, and I think we're going to take our dog shot on Saturday, man.
Yeah, it could be our only play of the night.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of spots on this card that we love, but we do love Volkov here. That being said, Ciryl Gane, I'll admit, he's leading the pack of this like new generation of heavyweights that has the size, athleticism, and technique to back it. He's a scary fighter, and outside of him being 8-0, I don't have many knocks on him. He since entering the UFC at 3-0, he's put together a 5-fight win streak with little to no resistance at all. He does have an extensive Muay Thai record where he's 12-0, a 2-time national champion in France. So combat sports isn't new to him at all, even though the 8-0 record suggests it. MMA is new to him, though. I say that to say that Ciryl Gane is very well-rounded, and although he does have all the credentials striking, he has also shown flashes of a great ground game, as we saw in the Pessoa and the Mays fight. The Dontel Mays fight, where if he decides he's big enough, like Jack Hermanson, if he decides that he wants to crank on something, he's going to make you tap. If he decides to squeeze, he's going to make you tap. He's a unicorn of the division. It just so happens that he is fighting, like you said, the dark horse, the Volkov 2.0 here, After that Curtis Blades loss, he went to the gym, put on 15, 20 pounds of muscle, and literally looks like a man now. He had a boy's body at first, and now he is a force to be reckoned with. You take a look at some of his UFC losses and Derek Lewis and Curtis Blades, and you run those fights back, I take Volkov 10 out of 10 times.
Especially in that Derek Lewis fight.
Oh my gosh.
Seconds away from winning it then.
Exactly. And I honestly think that 20 pounds of muscle would be enough to wear out Curtis Blades after 12, takedown stuffs to where he would actually get that finish in that fight. I think Volkov is one of the guys who really utilizes his size, and he's big enough to where Ciryl Gane isn't going to be able to get in and out of range like he does with a lot of these other guys. Ultimately, I think my biggest reason why leaning on Volkov is his experience level. The Gane has not been tested yet, and Volkov has been tested, and we've seen him make those adaptations by adding on that more weight. Volkov has learned his lesson, and Gane has not yet had to learn a lesson yet. And I think that's ultimately why we're leaning Volkov. And plus money right now, we will let that keep climbing, but I think that's what we're leaning on.
Yeah, man, I was quite shocked to see Volkov, open up as a dog and foresee all this money to come in on Ciryl Gane the way it is. But
it's a little worrying.
It is a little worrying. You're right, because he maybe thinks that a lot of sharp money that's out there on Ciryl Gane, but I see what those sharp people see as well, man. I like you said, I think he leads the pack of the new heavyweights and stuff like that. He's dismantling Junior Dos Santos. You protest it all you want, knocked you out clean, and get to a main event against Jairzinho Jair Rosenstruik, and man, it wasn't tested whatsoever. Rosenstruik did not throw a single punch. There was 144 strikes landed in a 5-round fight between those two heavyweights, and 69 of those 144 were leg strikes. 50% of a heavyweight fight, freaking leg kicks. I mean, Gane has not had anybody throwing back his way whatsoever that's caused him any type of trouble. And he does have that takedown threat, but it's not the takedown threat of Curtis Blades and stuff. I don't see Alexander Volkov giving up very many takedowns to Ciryl Gane. And Volkov's just hit his stride, man. After dismantling Walt Harrison over him the way he does, it is going to take a force to get Alexander Volkov out of there. He's got great feints, man. Disrupts you with that inside leg kick, the timing. And his punches, dude, 6'7", he knows he doesn't have to put the power on you. He can pepper you with the jab. He can come around the guard with the shots. And eventually that volume is just going to be enough to get you out of there, man. I think there's so much, not only just value on the one who's got 41 fights versus the one that's got 8 fights. I truly think Volkov is more talented on the feet here, more technical. And anytime Ciryl Gane steps into range, man, I think he's going to catch something up the middle from Volkov on Saturday.
So here's my question. We fucked up on the Rosenstruik Gane under by playing that last time. We now see another heavyweight fight set at 4.5 rounds, and it's a -110. Does that interest you?
To an extent, because it's heavyweights, and I think you play that numerous times, you come out on top profitable. But I think the better play, because he's plus money at +140, is just to take your shot on Volkov, man. Ciryl Gane's not the type to put himself in danger a lot. He's content with staying on that outside. I think if Volkov wasn't plus money, it'd be more tempting to take. But the fact that we can get the 33-8 fighter at a +145, it's stupid to me.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm glad that we're both on Volkov, and yeah, I think I learned my lesson trying to bet Gane unders. From here on out, I'll just let that fight happen and either pick him or the guy he's facing.
I'm with you, man. That wraps up all the 12 fights there. Warlley Alves also got himself an opponent as well. Didn't get to cover that fight, so there is 13 fights on Saturday night, and not like a lot of the past main events, but we are agreeing on this one here. Hop in the comments, let us know what you guys think on the main and co-main event. Our challenge, it was hard to find one, man, but I am going to side slightly with the underdog in Dalby and let you take Mean, so we can at least have something on the line, and someone's wearing that hat next week. But there's a fight of the night, man, that people need to pay attention for. What's that one going to be?
That one's got to be the sleeper fight of the card in Valiev versus Raoni Barcelos. I think that is guaranteed fireworks, and one that I'm also looking to play the under at plus money on.
Yeah, no, I think it's a 16-1 versus a 17-2 fighter. Yeah, absolute killer fight. For me, it's going to be Fili and Pineda. I know Fili goes to a lot of decisions. Pineda absolutely does not. And when Fili has that dance partner in front of him, like Shaman Moraes and stuff like that, Fili's got the dog in him that he likes to fight as well. And I think that one is going to be a killer fight, one that I've already played the under in myself as well. For my fighter to keep an eye on, I'm going to go ahead and go with Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's 13-0 with a 100% finish rate. There's a lot of question marks around him as if he's going to live up to that hype, if he's going to continue to be undefeated. I think the guy has the skill set here, and I think he's getting a very good test in someone who's, a very experienced 10-3 UFC fighter that could offer him some holes, that we have see if he needs to patch up or not yet.
Yeah, and at 40 years old, it's definitely passing on the torch right here. They're looking for Shavkat to get this win. My fighter to watch has got to be Tanner Boser, man. Boser, he's fighting for his life here, and I know he wants this fight, and he's going to have to deliver to keep his spot in the UFC.
Easy one for us. I think we're going to stick with the underdog. Give you the same answer here in Volkov. We think it's flat out insane that he is an underdog to begin with. Not only do we just side for him to win, but to get that +140, +145. I'm going to sit there till weigh-ins, and hopefully we even get a better number on that.
I agree.
What's your best bet on the night for Saturday, man?
My best bet's going to be that Valiev versus Barcelos under. I love it at plus money. I think Barcelos will bring the absolute heat, and ultimately I think he's going to be the one to get it done inside the distance, but I'm much happier just taking the plus money under.
For me, man, the best bet, I'm going to go back to taking Tanner Boser. What I've seen of OSP at heavyweight, I just don't like so much, man. The cardio looked really bad against Ben Rothwell. You could literally, I don't think we had a crowd. You could hear him breathing inside the octagon. And then you talked about how Tanner Boser is just itching to get back in there, man, and make up for his last performances. I think Tanner Boser could come out here and put that volume on OSP and could potentially get him out of there.
I like it.
That's going to conclude the podcast, man. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Make sure to hit that like button, sub to the channel if you haven't. Hop in those comments and let us know who you guys have on Saturday. Hope you're cashing some tickets with us.
Peace.